If you yell, I'll fucking kill you, Daryl.
And if you
Capiche?
kill me, I'll yell.
Well, it'll be a little bit hard for me to reach through the screen and kill you today.
I wouldn't put that past you, witch.
Well, if I was going to kill anybody, it would be from afar. But since I'm not a psychopath or a sociopath, last time I checked, at least I haven't been since I was a teenager, I think you're safe. I like you too much to kill you, Daryl. I just like to threaten it. It's quite bad. Like, isn't it illegal to threaten to kill people?
I think so, but I think it would have to be serious. So, like, if you're just going like, I'm going to kill you, and it's like a joke, then I'm sure that's fine.
Okay, good. Well, welcome to WTF Stories and Advice. I'm Caroline Cranshaw.
And I'm Daryl Gove.
And we are two hypnotherapists who love the sound of our own voices. And so we talk a lot of shit and we try to educate you and answer your questions and just fucking ramble to entertain ourselves.
Yeah, just be here to help you with your problems, read your stories, and have a blether together.
A blether. Blethering on. Today, I thought I've already done a podcast today with somebody else on this topic, and it was a lot of fun, and it's something we talk about all the time, and we also teach it.
Sex.
Of relationships.
Oh, the other one. Yes.
Yes, and how not to fuck it up, basically.
I think we should, but before we do, can I just tell you that I'm a little bit scarred because something finally happened today, and it's been threatening to happen ever since I became a therapist, and today was the first time.
What happened?
Well, as you know, my partner's away, and my lawnmower man didn't turn up for 2 days in a row, so I thought, fuck it, I'm going to mow the lawns myself.
Yeah.
And I got out there, 45 minutes in the middle of the hot summer, and I mowed the lawns. I was like, sense of achievement, done. But I'm fucking boiling, right? So what do? I go inside, strip off, put the aircon on full blast.
Yes.
Now, somebody who does not have appointment today...
Oh, no.
Not only turned up on the wrong day, but let themselves in, which has never happened.
Oh my God, Daryl. Are you fucking kidding me? Do not tell me one of your clients saw you naked today.
I mean, I had boxers on.
Okay, well, that's cute. They didn't see your twig and berries.
Didn't see me, but I covered my nipples. I went, ah, I'm naked, and ran and got dressed real quick.
What the fuck is wrong with that person?
Oh, there's nothing wrong. The client is like amazing.
No boundaries. I don't just walk into people's houses unannounced.
No, this, I don't know if this makes it worse or, yeah, it probably does. So it was them and their child. Their child had just gone ahead and opened up thinking, oh, we're going into this house. This is where we go. I'd just gone in and...
Oh, gotcha.
So
that's a bit better, yeah.
Yeah, so it was like a complete accident. And they're like, oh my gosh, are we early? I'm like, yeah. They're like, how much early? I'm like, 1 week. 1 whole week. And so they just cracked up and I cracked up and I was dressed very, very quickly. But also I was in a bit of shock. Luckily, the house was perfectly clean.
Well, thank God for that. Have you seen them before?
Yeah, several times.
Okay, well, that's good. Because if that was like the first meeting... Oh, well, thank God your schlong wasn't hanging out. Can you imagine?
Oh, dear. I mean, I don't tend to walk around the house naked too often because we've got neighbors and stuff like that.
This is exactly why I don't walk around the house naked. Though my partner will. And I'm like, dude, someone could walk in. And he's like, well, that's on them.
Well, exactly. It's like, it's not your fault if someone walks into the
like,
house.
If someone walks in unannounced, when I'm home, when I'm not expecting anybody, they're going to see my cock and balls, and that's their problem. And I'm like, okay. Have you ever seen that Jerry Seinfeld episode where Jerry is dating this woman and she just walks around naked all the time?
No.
And yeah, and he's just like, he's getting uncomfortable with it. And obviously he's not cool. So he starts doing it. And, but so he starts like sanding the floor or he's like doing like serious jobs naked. And the woman is like, that's just wrong. And that's different because you're a man. Nobody wants to see that. It's just, I haven't seen it for a very long time, but I was like, true.
Yep.
I don't want to see a man doing like construction jobs naked.
I wouldn't mind.
And yeah, I know you wouldn't mind. I'd rather watch a woman naked do that. And I'm straight. So, I don't know. Well, nothing like hangs out too much. Well, depending. Anyways, okay. I digress. Or you digress, but holy shit.
I know, right? I had to tell you that.
At least you had your boxers on. I can see why you waited till we started recording before you told me that. You must have been bursting to tell me. Because we had to do some business before. I would have not been able to hold that in.
Well, lucky the boxers were robust and able to hold that in.
They're super duper to hold in all your manhood, huh? Says every man ever.
Imported from the moon.
Yeah. Okay. Well, should we talk about how to screw up your relationships and how not to? Or how we...
Yes, please. Something a bit lighter. That would be great.
Yes. I just need to say that line again. Should we talk about how we screw up our relationships and how we can stop doing... Oh, I can't even fucking talk.
Shall we talk about how we screw up our relationships and how not to do that?
Yes. Thank you, Daryl. What would I do without you? Okay. So what we're going to talk about today is the work of Dr. John Gottman. Obviously, well, I'm like, I want to say to you, have you heard of John Gottman? But I know you've heard of John Gottman, Daryl, because we teach this on a regular basis. I was just so enamored with this guy's work when I first came across it and started learning about it. And here's the truth about human relationships. The majority of us have been taught to fail in our relationships, no matter how hard, no matter how much. Shut up.
How hard what is?
No matter how much we want them to succeed.
Yet, before we go any further, we have everything that I learned was wrong from every direction. There's lots of right things about it.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like most of what we've learned about relationships from our families, from our friends, from TV, from movies, from books is just not true, right? And the idea that two people meet and fall in love and live happily ever after is one of the biggest myths ever believed or perpetuated in the world. And the reality is that two people meet, fall in love, move in together, and do just about everything they can to weaken and destroy their love for each other. And, or I don't know, if you're in a polyamorous relationship, maybe you're a throuple, or I don't know, what's for quadruple, do that as well. But we think that, if we fall in love, just everything's going to work out. But the sad fact is you have a better chance of surviving cancer than making a relationship last till death do you part. That's crazy, isn't it?
It is. Luckily, I would definitely survive cancer. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I'm glad you would. John Gottman is a psychologist and a mathematician, and he spent over 30 years studying marriages and marriages that have worked out and marriages that have ended in divorce. And he started out as a mathematician and started moving into relationship therapy and family therapy. And how it used to work is people just kind of come up with theories of what worked in a relationship and what didn't. And he's like, well, how do you know that's true? And so he decided to science that shit up, which is great.
Yeah, it's perfect because aside from anything else, things change generationally, right? So what worked in one generation is just not going to work in the next. Like
exactly.
20 years ago, we didn't have social media, Tinder, none of that. So now everything has changed. So yeah, let's look for the science.
So he can predict which couples will eventually divorce or break up and which will stay together based on the ways the couples interact after only watching them for 5 minutes with 94% accuracy.
Love it.
Just 5 minutes of having a discussion about, let's say, a conflict that we've had recently. He can just like pinpoint that couple's going to break up and by when. And he can make these predictions because he's discovered the behaviors that lead to breakups. And he also has figured out which ones lead to like happy relationships. So there's certain signs and attitudes which Dr. Gottman looks for to predict relationship breakdowns. So they include Hard. You sound surprised, Daryl.
I know this, but I'm like filling in the gaps, like what people at home must be thinking. Ooh.
Ooh, you want to find out all the things you're doing to fuck up your relationship? Well, here we go. These behaviors include harsh startups, criticism, contempt, defensiveness, stonewalling, and failed repair attempts. When these traits are present in a relationship, especially more than one, there's a very high probability that this relationship is not going to endure. We'll just kind of go through them. Number one, a harsh startup. First sign that a breakup's on its way is like how we start conversations, because how you start it, like 96% of the time, is how it's going to end, right? If you come in and blast the shit out of somebody, it's not going to be a productive conversation.
No.
When it starts with a harsh start, such as acting accusatory, negative, or contemptuous, the conversation is just destined to fail. But if it starts with a relaxed tone and calm manner, it's mostly will end on a positive note as well. The next one, do you know what the next one is, Daryl?
I love what you just said, though, because thinking about that practically, anytime that you're going to have conflict with anyone, like this could be the single most important thing you could take from this podcast. Start in the way you want it to finish. No matter how angry you are, no matter how upset, distressed, if you go in peaceful, kind, and loving, that is how it will end. Even if you don't reach consensus yet or an agreement yet, you will end it that way. And if you start harsh and angry and criticizing, then that's how it will finish. This is predictable. We can observe it and we can measure it. Yeah, that for me is just such a great thing to remember. It's always pause, take a deep breath, and can you not fucking eat the last pie, please? Thank you very much. Please, thank you. Or whatever it is.
And I think people just, they don't even think about it. And they're used to the way their mothers or their parents communicate with them, is that your mother will come in. And I know my mother used to just come in and blast me, and I'd be like, rah! And we go back and forth. And that was how I was taught to communicate. It wasn't just like, hey, darling, I'd really appreciate if you could clean your room. It's like, clean your fucking room. And then, of course, I'd be resistant, not do it at all, make my room messier. And it just escalates, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what he calls these behaviors are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? It's like predicting the end of times is near. The next one is criticism. Now, this is one so many people are guilty of. I've pretty much been guilty of all of these behaviors. And, well, let's face it, even in this relationship in the beginning, while I continue to work on myself, because it is hard to hold that calm, loving space if someone is not, right? And
especially
it's like,
if you're a woman.
Oh,
threw myself in the firing line there.
Oh, yeah. Now, Daryl just likes to wind me up, just said he's feeling safe because he's on the other side of a screen and not next to me where I can punch him in the balls. Not really. Not that I would. I joke a lot about violence, don't I?
You do, but would you tend to agree that women could be a little bit more critical than men? Or is that just not true? Is that just something I made up in my head?
Possibly, but I know a lot of critical men as well.
Good point. And it's something we've talked about on this podcast before. We've both experienced it, as well as dished it out. We're all human, right?
I am a Capricorn with a Virgo rising. So that is, I mean, it's just a miracle that I'm not ripping shreds off everyone I talk to, really.
I'm the opposite. I wear these like rose tinted specs and everything is just always like rosy. Like, yeah, no, it's fine because I love him. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
Well, I'm very supportive. I consider myself a very positive person, and I am. People have called me a Pollyanna a million times. But I think at the same time, if people ask me a question, I am honest. I don't blow smoke up people's asses.
Yeah, thinking about you and Pollyanna together, what I'm imagining is Pollyanna went through some shit, toughened up, started wearing like leather and like ripping dicks off of cunt guys.
I'm going to rip your dick off because it's part of your learning lesson. But it's all going to work out. This isn't happening to you. It's happening for you and your spiritual growth.
That's as close to Pollyanna as I would put you. But I can see
Yeah.
why people on first glance might.
I guess for me, I always try to reach for the better thought, right? So if it's all turning to shit, I always turn to this must be happening for a reason. There's something better for me. The universe is just clearing the way, or there's things that just aren't right for you, right? And you might not figure that out at all times. But a lot of times I'm like, oh, that's why that didn't work out because there was something way better.
Yeah.
It's that trust, kind of like a surrender to what is. Like you just can't change everything. But what you can change is yourself and stop being such a critical asshole.
Yes.
Yeah. So criticism is the act of finding fault or judging harshly. And I mean, there's a difference between criticism and complaints, right? Because you're
Mhm.
always going to have complaints about your partner. There's no one is perfect. Every person will have some kind of complaints. Whether or not you need to verbalize them to your partner all the time is another story. But complaining about your partner is normal. However, the way you go about voicing those complaints is significant. So when you
Mhm.
criticize your partner, you're attacking their personality or character, which conveys you're right and they're wrong. And you probably are, let's face it. But that doesn't help. An example is using sweeping statements like, you always leave the dishes out for me, or you never do this. It's like you blah, 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 which that makes people feel attacked. And then they're going to get defensive and the conversation is not going to go anywhere. So instead, what you should do is say, I feel like I want to murder you when you leave the fucking dishes in the sink. Or, yeah, no, don't say it like that. It's, I feel really stressed out when I come home to a messy kitchen. Or what are examples? We all have these little things that we're anal about. For me, it's laundry. You mess up my laundry and I will come for you. I
Oh,
swear to God.
on that subject, I've got a question for you.
Yes.
So I've been doing the laundry for the last month,
Mm-hmm.
do the math. And and it occurred to me today, it occurs to me every time I do the laundry, but today it occurred to me to ask somebody about this. What hole does the liquid go into? I don't know if it's number 1, 2, or 3, so I just put it in all of them.
I don't have a washing machine that does that.
Like, how do you know? It just says 1 or 2. Like, I think one must be for softener and one must be for
One, I would assume
yeah.
it would be one, right? Because soap, and then maybe two would be softener, and three
I
vinegar.
don't
I
know.
don't, I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
used to always use softener, and it just messes up your clothes. Now, I'm more talking about, like, if you mix black, like, I know a lot of people, I won't mention any names, but there's some people that I happen to live in the same house with that would be quite happy to put every single color along with some maybe white towels into the same load and then throw it all in the dryer. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't like that. So, anyways, okay, here's the thing. In relationships, they estimate that 69% of the problems that you have at the beginning of the relationship, you will have at the end of the relationship. They are
Mhm.
irresolvable. Luckily, we have resolved the laundry issue, so that's good.
There
But
are ways to resolve them, and I guess this would be the average if people didn't have tools.
yes, but some are not resolvable. Like, and that could come down to values. That's all kinds of things. But I think it's also knowing that sometimes you're just never going to agree on something. And that doesn't mean the end of the relationship. You're just going to have to agree to disagree.
Yeah, just accept each other for the differences and the difference in values.
Exactly. Because who's to say your way is right? Like with me with laundry, my way is definitely right. There's no doubt about it. But some people don't care. So, yeah, it's just one of those things. The next behavior that you absolutely don't want to do is contempt. So, contempt
Mm.
is a feeling of disdain or scorn. Like classic contemptuous comments made by partners include insults, name calling, hostile sarcasm or ridicule, aggressive body language, tone of voice, sneering, rolling your eyes, making faces. This is something I probably call out, like, when I'm working with a couple, I call them out on contemptuous behavior more than anything else.
Mm.
And it's really interesting. It's normally the person who has made the appointment, who feels like they're in the right and they're the right ones and their
Mhm.
partner is the wrong ones. But meanwhile, they're subconsciously they're rolling their eyes, they're like making critical statements all the time, and they're doing this stuff that is conveying disgust and you're wrong and I can't stand you, kind of like through their body language. And remember,
Yeah.
your body language is like more important in communication than any other factor. It's body language, which I think is like 68%. And then it's tone of voice. And then what you say is like 7% of the like how people take it. Make sure you're not rolling your eyes at people. You're not sighing loudly in exasperation. You're not making faces at them.
Because, when people do these behaviors, I think they think they're getting away with it because they didn't overtly use words to express contempt, but it gets picked up by the other partner, like, and the people around them notice it as well. And then you try and say something, or someone will comment, but they'll defend themselves from from a high ground of, oh, but I didn't say anything. No, I didn't. Oh no, I just did this, or just I was just breathing, or people won't. They'll see the body language, but they might not be able to articulate why that person looks contemptuous, just that they do. And so it's such a treat when they're in front of you and you're able to kind of name it and go, actually, that eye rolling there, that's aggressive, that's contemptuous, that's telling your partner you're not listening and you don't care what they're saying. And if my partner did that to me, that would be the end of the conversation.
Absolutely. That's the thing. I'll explain the couples I'm working with the rules, right? Or these are the behaviors that we want to look out for
Hmm.
and want to change. And so as we go through and talking about the different things that we're working on, I'm going to call you out when you do those behaviors. And I'll say how with my partner and I, when we first got together, and we both did some of these behaviors, absolutely, even though I'd already learned about this. but But I talked to him about it, and he was luckily, he's very open with all of that stuff. But whenever he would do any of those behaviors or when I would, we'd just be like, yell out, "Contempt, defensiveness," name
And train
calling.
each other out of it.
Yeah, because you don't even realize you're doing it. It is so
Mm.
subconscious. And that's why I mean, going to relationship therapy is great, but if you can also go to somebody that can actually help you change those behaviors, like a hypnotherapist, at that subconscious level, because you're not consciously trying to do it, but I think you can consciously change it once, because most people literally have no idea they're even doing it.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And if you become aware of your own body language, your own criticism, your own contempt, and so on, then of course you can change it. Most people don't want to be contemptuous or critical. It's just normal. It's just how they've been. They're just modeling themselves on what they've seen growing up, or how they've seen relationships on the TV, or it's unconscious. They're just responding to the environment without processing a thought in between. So, yeah, just pay attention. Notice it. Are you being contemptuous? Are you using body language, sighs, eye rolls, or anything like that? And if you are, and you value your relationship, probably stop.
Absolutely. Here's the thing, when we slip in these subconscious behaviors, when we show contempt, your partner will respond normally with being defensive, right? Which is the
Hmm.
next horseman of the apocalypse. So,
Hmm.
defensiveness occurs when you see yourself as the victim or warding off a perceived attack. And when partners are defensive, they're not open to learning and they're not able to access those more vulnerable feelings underneath. Becoming defensive is a very common response that many people feel when they're criticized and are trying to protect themselves, but it just never resolves it. So defensiveness is a way of like not taking responsibility and counterattacking.
Definitely guilty of that.
Yeah. So ways we do this, right? We cross complaining, responding to your partner's complaint or criticism with a grievance of your own. Yeah, well, you never make the bed, or you spend too much money, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Disagreeing, then cross complaining. That's not right. I never do that. You're the one who blah, 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 blah. So making excuses, it's not my fault. I didn't even know. I didn't mean to. Rather than, I'm sorry this has upset you. It's all about taking responsibility, right?
Mhm.
Repeating yourself without any consideration. Just keep saying the same thing over and over and over. Yes, butting. Yes, but you do this.
You see, I thought I was defensive before you read that list, but now I'm thinking I'm not so defensive. No.
I think you can be defensive just by not really saying anything. I think.
Yeah, I think it's, well, it depends if someone is attacking you or not. Because
Yeah.
if someone's attacking, then that's a natural response, I guess, sometimes to defend yourself. But the thing is, sometimes all people are doing is trying to just give you feedback, and people will automatically go into defensive mode.
Absolutely. And I know for me, if I feel attacked, I will find your most vulnerable weakness or insecurity and just destroy your soul with it and when the conversation's over. So I don't do that with my partner, luckily. I mean, I haven't done that for a very long time. I'm a therapist now. That sounds horrible. I shouldn't even say that I do that. Sounds scary. But yeah, I still obviously have some defensive traits. The next step, the next horseman that's going to spell doom for your relationship is stonewalling.
Ooh.
Stonewalling is a way of avoiding the feeling of being overwhelmed. And so what happens is we get so overwhelmed. I know I used to be really good at stonewalling when I wasn't then being the complete opposite crazy. As I felt under attack and get defensive, then I'll just shut down.
Yeah.
Right. And you just start ignoring your partner. You don't talk. You're not receptive to working it out at all. And then people will try even harder to get through to you.
Is this a deliberate action, or is it like through overwhelm? Like
I
you're
think
not
it can be
meaning to
through
start.
overwhelm. And I think that the reason people tend to stonewall, not always, but a lot of the time, it's because they're flooding. And flooding is we're going into fight or flight. So our nervous systems are in fight or flight. We get overwhelmed and we just shut down. And we cannot talk in that moment.
Yeah,
And
because if you get flooded with too much cortisol, then you forget what you're saying, and that yeah, the
yeah,
brain will be flooded. And but I guess there's being flooded and not remembering or being able to talk versus withdrawing and going, I'm not going to talk about this.
yeah, there's that. And then I think people just will shut down when you go into fight or flight. Your prefrontal cortex shuts down, and it's like the animal brain is in charge, right? And it's just you want to
Hmm.
fight or run away. And so the key is if you see your partner start to stonewall, start to shut down and be flooding, you got to leave them alone. You got to
Hmm.
give them a minimum of 20 minutes, more like a half an hour, an hour
Hmm.
to calm down. Because if you keep trying to go and go and go at them, and I used to be the expert of that too, they're just going to push you away more and more.
Yeah.
You need to absolutely give them that space, time to cool off. And then what you can do is repair attempts. And that's when someone's trying to rectify the dispute.
And
So,
from the other side as well, if you notice yourself stonewalling, or you notice that you have a tendency to withdraw or shut down, then even just communicating that, hey, I'm just a bit overwhelmed right now. Can you give me some time, please? Just give me 20 minutes. Just let me just get my breath back. Let me calm down. I do want to talk about this. Our relationship's important. I just can't think clearly right in this moment. And hopefully they're going to give that to you. But then repair attempts, yes.
so once they do start trying to do repair attempts, or when you do, I think it's, especially if your partner's doing this to you, it is important to accept the bid, they call it. So it's like a bid for, oh, look at that beautiful bird outside. One of the other ones like ignores you or is like, I fucking hate birds. Then you're gonna, it's just putting a kibosh. And
Yeah.
ways you can do it is humor, right? Of just,
Yeah.
and not sarcasm. Don't be sarcastic, but if you can use some humor, I think that just helps diffuse the tension.
Hmm.
So, ways you can overcome this. So, a soft startup, calm, kind tone of voice when you start, edit yourself, filter. Do not say everything that goes in your head, right? Like,
And
I'm sorry.
have someone else you can say that to. Like if you've got some too many complaints or too much criticism, then speak to a therapist or a hypnotherapist.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that when couples edit themselves and they have a good filter and they're not saying, "Yes, your ass looks enormous in those pants. You shouldn't wear them." It's like
Hmm.
then people are going to get triggered. Another one
Yeah.
is having high standards. Like have high standards. The most successful couples are those who even as newlyweds refuse to accept hurtful behavior from one another. The lower the
Yeah.
level of tolerance for bad behavior in the beginning relationship, the happier the couple is down the road.
Phew.
Yeah, it's huge. And repair and exit the argument, like I said before, of just making some type of humorous comment or talking about something else just to see if they're not receptive. I wouldn't keep trying to repair. But that's the thing. If people don't accept bids, then it's a bit of a worry.
Yeah, when it comes to the bids and the repairs, it's how the person responds that's so important. Because
Mm.
if one person is making bids and the other person wants to stay in victim mode or wants to just shoot them down, then it's just so harmful. Even if I'm triggered and I notice someone making a bid, it's a conscious decision to go, that's a bid. I'm going to accept it, even if I don't want to, because this is important for this relationship, whether it's a romantic one or another relationship. Someone makes a bid to repair it, lean into that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Gottman's newlywed study, he found after a 6-year follow-up, couples that had stayed married turned towards each other 86% of the time, and couples that had divorced averaged only 33% of the time. Big difference.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's massive, actually, isn't it?
It is. He's also got some interesting ratios. He calls them magic ratios, which he found that there's certain numerical ratios that are predictive of splitting up and also of happiness in relationships. There's the divorce ratio, which is
Mm-hmm.
0.8 positives for every one negative in a relationship during a disagreement discussion is predictive of
Mm-hmm.
divorce within an average of 5.6 years. So this is the case for 50% of the couples. It's not how much you fight, it's how you fight,
And
right?
when you
And
fight, you must have positives.
exactly. If there's less positives than negatives, you're pretty much doomed to break up if you don't change it. Staying together but miserable ratio is 1.2 positives for every one negative. Typically stay together but report feeling very unhappy in the relationship.
Yep. And that's during a disagreement. Yeah.
That's just during a disagreement, but I think this applies to your day.
Yeah, I think so too. Over the course of a whole day, how many positive interactions do you have versus negative ones? And of course, if it's if more negative than positive, that's not going to work out.
Exactly. Yeah. So happy couples ratio 5 to 1. Couples with this positive to negative ratio describes themselves as very satisfied and happy in their relationships. This is the ratio occurring during disagreements, though. But I think think about it during your day. An interesting experiment would be count how many positives and how many negatives are going on and who's doing what. Because I find a lot of people are unhappy with their relationships. They're seeking out therapy, but they are a big part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't even realize it because they're just criticizing their partner all the time for what they're not doing right. And it doesn't make your partner want to do nice things for you.
Yep. There was feedback from one of the students in the hypnotherapy diploma that we teach,
Mhm.
and they put in the chat about how they'd recognized a behavior that they had with their partner after one of the classes, and
Mm.
they'd altered their behavior in response, and just how grateful they were for that realization and the effect that had. Because it takes one person. It takes one person to recognize what they are doing and to make changes. And the shifts can be just like a tsunami.
Exactly. And I get all that with a lot of people where their partner doesn't want to go to therapy. They don't want to change. That's a big red flag. But it doesn't take two people to change a relationship. If you change your behavior and start doing more positive interactions, then
Yeah.
your partner should respond. If they don't, well, that's very telling in itself.
And as part of that change, it's important not just you behave well and let them behave however they want, couple that with high standards. Keep high standards for what you will accept at the same time. And it's going to work out really well for you. Or they're going to fuck off because they're not right.
Exactly. And another interesting thing he looked at was examining the impact of high, medium, and low conflict couples and the differences
Mm-hmm.
between partners in a couple. So if one partner is really high conflict and the other one's low, they found there was like no right or wrong conflict style. And
Mm-hmm.
there's very successful high conflict style couples, but it was all about how they fight. So it's not whether or not you fight, it's how you fight. And I find that if both parts of the couple are, or throuple or whatever, I don't want to exclude anybody, are low conflict, sometimes to me that's a little bit of a worry because they'll neither of them will say anything because they just want to avoid that conflict the whole time. But things don't really get
Yeah.
resolved.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's so important to bring stuff up because otherwise it just festers, right? And we'll not say anything and we'll smile and be like, fine. And then it just eats away and it eats away.
Oh, and there's nothing worse than having a low conflict relationship, and then like 2 years down the line, someone reels off a list of everything you've ever done wrong for the last 2 years.
Yeah,
And it's like, oh, okay. Well, it would have been really nice if you brought that up then, because that would have been an easy fix.
exactly. I call that kitchen sinking it. It's everything but the
Yeah.
kitchen sink. And again, it's rules all set up for couples, right? We're not going to criticize. We're going to watch our body language. We're not going to roll our eyes. We're not going to bring up other stuff. And when we discuss one thing, we are not going to bring up any other conflicts until that one is finished. And then you can move on to the next. People struggle with this so much.
I give my clients the easiest thing, I think, is to get them to have their conflicts and conversations. If they know one's coming and they know that there's a conversation to be had, have it while they're on a walk,
Hmm.
because then they're side by side and they're not looking in each other's eyes. They're not getting triggered. They're not triggering each other's. If somebody accidentally has contempt by rolling their eyes, for example, that will be missed because they're walking. So it's,
That's a
it's
good
less,
point.
yeah, it's just there's no triggering of each other. And also there's movement because they're physically walking. So that just means movement is happening. And so change is going to happen while they have that conversation. And if there's excess cortisol and stress, it reduces the chance of people flooding and getting overwhelmed and then stonewalling. Because again, there's movement and there's walking. Sometimes when I say it to people, they're like, oh, yes, so it's safe because there's other people around. I'm like, this is another issue we need to talk about.
Yeah, that's a telling. Yeah, well, also, people will be better behaved in public.
Yeah.
That is true. But that they say it's safe because there's people around.
Right. Whereas I'm thinking probably you were walking on a beach or in a forest, but yeah, sure, go to the mall and have if you fear for your safety and need to have this conversation. Yeah.
Hey, whatever works. And it's interesting. Another thing he comes up with is the cost of bad relationships. And his
Mm.
research found that the level of contempt in a relationship could be used as a reliable prediction of the number of infectious illnesses the partner experiences in the next year.
Ooh.
So the more conflict and contempt you're experiencing in your relationship, the lower your immune system is. You know that, didn't you? Yeah, you did. Of course you did.
Yeah, but I don't think about it. As on a daily basis. It's not something that I think about. And it's just so massive. Inner conflict causes illness, it causes sickness, it causes stress. Anything that causes stress that tells your body to go into fight or fly, while your body's in fight or fly, it's not building new immune cells efficiently. It's not operating the immune system efficiently. And so, yeah, if you're in constant stress, of course you're going to get sick more. That just
Yeah,
makes sense. Yeah.
exactly. That's really interesting. And it's like your immune system's so much more than colds and flus, right? If your immune system's down, you're more likely to get cancer. You're
Hmm.
a lot of factors like that, autoimmune disorders. And it's interesting. I mean, I've worked with lots of people with cancer, which you have as well. And I've not always, but I find there is a common theme with people that have been very unhappy in a relationship for a long time.
Yeah. One of the things I think about with cancer is that we all have it all the time, right? We all
Mm,
have cancer cells every day, all of us. And our body is meant to take care of it. So it's meant the cell's meant to kill itself. And if the cell doesn't kill itself, there's other cells that are meant to come and go, hey, come on, and tell it what to do. And there's other cells that are meant to kill the cell and take it away. There's all these fail safes that your body has. So if all of that's not happening, then that's a massive dysfunction of the immune system. And of course, it can come from external stuff like smoking and cigarettes and toxins and so on. But also, if you're constantly stressed all the time, say from a dysfunctional relationship, or it could be a job situation, or trauma, people that are suffering trauma and who are not able to process and move into a safe place and clear that trauma, and their immune systems are their nervous systems under constant barrage over time, then yeah, it's a risk factor from my point of view. I don't know if we're even allowed to say that, but yeah, a bad relationship, it makes sense that it would increase the risk of illness.
You don't know if you're allowed to say that. Is that where we're going?
Well,
Is that how
we
the world is turning? It is.
yeah, you got to be careful what you say because you can like get into a lot of trouble if you make claims. So if you're not a inverted commas medical professional and you start talking about certain things, so yeah, I'm very careful what I say, because things that should be obvious, such as a strong immune system, is helpful in fighting disease, over the last few years is not allowed to be taken into account.
Oh, yeah. Have you heard now, not only do they want to start, well, in New Zealand, they're passing all kinds of laws, but they want to charge for misinformation, right? But also what they
Mhm.
call malinformation. Have you heard of this? So, malinformation, and I think this is like happening in many countries, is true information, but used in a way to manipulate people into changing their minds about things, which I'm like,
Right.
what? Is
It's
that
gonna be a funny
crazy?
few years. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. If we can't trust people to look at two sides of an argument and make their mind up, then society's lost and it's done. But I know New Zealand's trying to lead the charge with these anti-free speech laws that want to make the government the only people who are allowed to tell you what's the truth, which they've been quite open about. But even though that's true, I could be accused of malinformation for giving something that's true if I was trying to persuade somebody. So
With malicious intent. I mean, that's crazy to me that you actually could be charged and jailed and sentenced for saying things that are true. Like, thought
I think
police.
I don't think it's going to happen. I think that people are not going to stand for that. But
Well, and surely they're not gonna go around charging people for telling the truth, right? They're doing it under the thought of hate speech. And yeah, like I think there should be certain things that are not okay to say, but I don't know. I am a supportive of free speech. I may not agree with your free speech, but you still have a right to say it. Who says
yeah,
we all have to agree? Since when is that a thing?
yeah, I think that we should all 100%. It doesn't matter if you're offensive to me. I support your right to say it. I do think we have to be careful when it comes to things like medical issues, cancer, and things like that. Because if for example, there was a naturopath going around, and she wasn't even a naturopath. It was just a woman who called herself a naturopath, going around putting this cream on this woman with skin cancer
Oh, I
for
remember that story. That's a
I,
terrible story.
for months, and it just got worse and worse and worse. I think the woman died, and you shouldn't be able to lie and say you could say something can treat something when it can't. On the other hand, when it's true, that should be okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And that's again an extreme case. And I think that woman went to jail
yeah,
for that.
rightly.
Which, yeah, exactly. I think it's always like, I mean, with us, we work with doctors, we work on par with psychiatrists and people's GPs. And so I think you want to be careful, but it is interesting the way the world's going. And I don't know, we can't just live in echo chambers. But like in relationships, you don't need to agree on everything. It's okay to disagree. And I think that's the thing. Is like the more we can accept that, where has it ever been a thing that we all have to think the same?
Yeah, I love it. It's such a freeing thought to go, hey, you know what? We can both be right or both be wrong, or we can disagree and just get on with life. We can just agree to disagree. It's such a freeing way to be in your relationship that actually I don't have to agree with you and you don't have to agree with me, but we can still love each other and we
Yeah.
can still live our best life. Yeah. Yeah.
People aren't an
Go
extension of
into
you, and I think that's the thing. We project onto people, and we think that, oh, when we first meet someone, they're just my ideal person, you're my soulmate, and we're just projecting what we think they are and how we think they should
Mhm.
be. And then when we realize that they're not this projection that we put onto them and what we thought, then it's like, how dare you? And then the power struggle comes in because we're trying to force them into being how we thought they should be.
Yeah.
So it is. If you want to change somebody, you shouldn't be in a relationship with them. Full stop. I know
Yeah.
especially women. Women are so guilty of this. They fall in love with men's potential.
Yeah, been there, done that. Yep. But
Same.
he's got a kind heart, I can tell.
I can help him. Yeah, no, you don't be people's therapist. And if you can't accept them right exactly as they are, because we do that with our friends all the time, right? We don't like think our friends have to be an exact certain way, and we accept their faults. We can have disagreements. We can think
Mhm.
differently to them, and we don't get hugely offended. But then when it comes to our partners, we like some people, and I'm definitely guilty of this when I was younger, was, oh, they must be just like me. They must have the same politics, the same belief systems. Like everything
Mm.
should be the same. Otherwise, they're not right for me. And it's like,
See, I went the opposite way, and I would
yeah.
date people who are the complete opposite. So I remember having in my very first relationship having political conversations and approaching arguments when we were just because they would try and like, but Daryl, why? Why do you support this political ideology or political party? And why don't you just do this? And I'm right and you're wrong. And I was like, that's okay. You vote for them, I'll vote over here. And what has been a constant theme of trying to persuade me around, but I'm not to be persuaded.
Well, yeah,
No
that's
one
the
is.
thing. It's funny. Every partner I can almost think of has had different political beliefs to me. I've gotten almost all of them around to thinking like I do. But you don't get them to do that by arguing them into the ground and debating with them, even though that's fun. But it is,
Well,
yeah.
I like a good debate with an intelligent person. I think
Me
it can be
too.
quite fun. You know what? I decided now I just probably can avoid that in my relationship, please. Thanks.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's the place where you don't probably wanna do it.
Yeah.
Is debating things. But I think it's okay to be different. So,
Yay, phew.
on
Phew,
that
that's
note,
relief.
yeah. So, well, there's just a few tips. I'll add a link so you can like see all these as well. I've got an article written on it. Look up Dr. John Gottman and just read any book of his. Basically, 8 Dates is really good. 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. I mean, he has so many.
And if you like this stuff and you like how we present it and you want to go balls deep into it, then how about think about doing our online diploma of clinical hypnotherapy? There's a whole module where we go right into it. You get to examine yourself, relationships, and know how to help your relationship and other people's. But you don't have to pay us money to do that. You can go into your own reading.
That's a very good point because we have students from like the other side of the world who are still going to our classes and doing it. And you can do the whole thing just completely online. But yeah, if you find these topics interesting, you should definitely train with us because it's a lot of fun. And we are
Yes.
the funnest, funniest hypnotherapy instructors in the world. We've
At least we
decided.
think so. Yeah. Yeah, we decided that today, didn't we?
We did.
We put it in the marketing email.
And if you know anyone better, well, tell them to go fuck themselves. No. Tell them I would like to meet them because they must be amazing. So, well, anything else you want to say, Daryl?
No. I think that is all. I'll save it for the next one. Yep, I hope
Mm.
that you have a great afternoon, everybody that's listening to this, unless it's the morning, in which case, have a good morning. No, it's never nighttime, no. And it could be. You're very pretty, and we think you're beautiful, and we love you.
You're smart. You're important. You're
You're
a good
kind.
person. You
You're
deserve
intelligent.
good things.
You have great taste in podcasts.
Yeah. Oh, that's number one. Obviously, you are an amazing person because you're listening to us.
Evidence. That is
Evidence.
evidence.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
evidence-based facts there. So, if you haven't done so already, give us a 5-star review just to help other people find us and tell us your stories or questions. We'd love to help. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. All right. See
Cool.
you next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.